people are joining. We have over 100 participants registered for this webinar, which is really excellent. So we're not going to delay too much with starting, but I'm just going to share my screen so that people can see the agenda. Okay, I think we have to wait a few more minutes so that everyone can join. In the meantime, I hope you see my screen. I'm going to switch to slideshow. While we're waiting, I'll just say a few words about RDF and what we do to fill up the time while people are joining. You can read this slide about our concept of digitalization. As you know, RDF is a nonprofit organization. We focus on delivering public administration systems, and we use technology as a method of change, help to trigger institutional change using systems that streamlines and the workflow of the ministry or department. We use an agile approach, which means that we start quickly and then we make a lot of adjustments while we are implementing. And we have usually in-country presence in the various government institutions we support. And there's a bit of a push and pull relationship between us and the client. We push them, and sometimes they push us, and we understand their requirements and how the systems must work to make it work according to the regulations and their specific environment. And that's how we progress over time. And then our model is that these systems are free. There are no license fees. And every time we have a project, the project pays for some upgrades, some new modules to the software, and everyone's upgraded for free. So other countries will then benefit from these new modules and new features. And we guarantee remote technical support to ensure sustainability. But of course, to have in-country support, we require projects. And so we are very much dependent on the project funding from our donor partner, which is mostly GIZ and the World Bank, but also others. I think most donors have at some point funded our projects. Also, we see increasingly that governments are paying for the projects themselves, which we think is also incredibly good because it shows a lot of commitment and ownership from government side. And we focus a lot on revenue, hence the name Revenue Development Foundation. Revenue is always a government priority, and all academic research says that governments able to manage their own revenue well are also able to be efficient at delivering better services to its citizens. And yeah, then we also get some measurable, tangible results in terms of revenue mobilization. So that was a little bit introduction to RDF. Then I think I will maybe let Vera explain a little bit how we're going to deal with the participants. Here's the program. Vera, you're helping to moderate.
Yes, hi everyone, and thank you so much for giving us time and to listen to our webinar for today. I'm going to be a moderator for today, and basically that just means that I'm going to make sure all the questions are answered that are posed by the presenters, and I'm also going to be watching a little bit on time so that we don't get over time too much. And I'm also going to be leading discussions, and just in case there's any clarity needed during the time of the presentations, I'm going to be doing that. Osman has kind of already started his session, which is going to be just an overview of our systems and what we do as Revenue Development Foundation. And then we're going to have the Auditor General of Norway, sorry, Mr. Christensen. I can't really pronounce your first name, so I'm going to skip that altogether. But he's going to go and give us a small presentation about the working group he's in and how he fits into the EITI mainstreaming that we're going to talk about it today. And then we're going to be having Mr. Ali Badara Pai, I believe. Sorry, if I pronounce your name, just like forgive me for today. I'm very sorry. He's from Eiti, Senegal, and he's going to be talking about a project that we've been doing in Senegal and what impact that has had. And also just give us an overview of what RDF has done with Senegal in terms of mainstreaming Eiti in Senegal. And then we're going to have Mamadou Diaby from Eiti Guinea, who's going to talk about Govern is one of our platforms that we also use in Eiti mainstreaming. And going to go into a little bit about the system itself and how they're using it, just a short presentation. They haven't used the system for a long time, but it will give an overview of one of the systems and particularly how it has affected how they mainstream the Eiti process in Guinea. And then we're going to finish off with discussions and key takeaways. Just to let you know, whenever you have a question, you can post it in the chat and I'll try and catch it. And what we try to do is for every slide or every section you finish presenting, we're going to try and answer questions that way. However, if it's too disruptive, I'll just keep them for the end of the presentation. That way there's no start, stop kind of presentation going on. But feel free to reach out on the chat. And I'll be catching those questions and making sure that at least the panelists who are here capture them and answer them as best as possible. So go ahead, Osmond, and continue the presentation.
Okay, perfect. So I will just make a little overview of why Eiti has got onto this path of mainstreaming and what this entails, at least from RDF's perspective. You know, we are an organization that focuses very much on government systems. So we are seeing with the eyes of government systems only. So there might be that some may not entirely agree with us, but we're going to present what we think that it entails. And I'm going to look a little bit at what is required, how do we start, and then I will show you some of the systems that we can offer and the kind of ideal setup scenario that we can envision. So first, a little bit of background. You know, initially, Eiti, seen from our perspective, was set up as a bit of a parallel process to the government oversight mechanisms. So I think that we have to understand this with the eyes of the 2000s, early 2000s, perhaps, where government accountability mechanisms were not as strong as today. I recall working in Sierra Leone in 2002 to 2005. And you know, at that time, the capacity of the ministry was very weak, and it made very much sense that when an international initiative wanted to put more scrutiny on the payments and revenue and of governments, that they will set up a parallel process where they basically ask everyone to report, to compare the figures and see what they find, if they find discrepancies and so forth. What has happened since then is that most governments have digitalized at least some key systems, customs systems, for example, tax administration systems, license management systems, and so forth. So then it doesn't really make sense to use data. It doesn't make sense to use data on these forms anymore. We want to pull the data directly from the systems. Also, expectations have changed in terms of people's expectations of digital services that the government should provide, and also data that should be more up to date than the old validation reports that often had like a 2-3 year delay. And Eiti has responded very well to this changing landscape. They are very good at picking up on these signals and have critical discourse within the group and with the stakeholders, I think. And they should have credit for that. And some way you can see that they're adapting to their own success, because the attitude towards government system, government data transparency it has changed dramatically the last 5 to 10 years, and EITI at least partly has contributed directly to that. Now there's a requirement to mainstream within the coming 2 to 3 years, and countries actually have to move quite quickly to stay compliant going forward. So I think that in 2 to 3 years there might be countries that have had an easy time until now that will find themselves a little bit outdated. So just to, I made a chart here to explain a little bit what the difference is between the old model and the new model, to put it a little bit in perspective. So on the left side, you see the validation process when in an environment where you wouldn't trust government systems. So you will basically ask all these companies and ministries, departments to fill in the EITI declaration forms, and you will put that data together, try to identify discrepancies, and write a report that is presented for a multi-stakeholder group. And in many cases, it's still going on like that. The problem starts when government starts to digitalize, and I think in Sierra Leone, I saw quite a long time ago that some staff in the ministry was actually transcribing data from the system on their screen to the EITI declaration form. And I'm using that as an example to show that to explain that now it's kind of going a little bit backwards. You know, government is digitalizing and EITI needs to keep up. And there's a lot of new opportunities with pulling data from government systems instead. So when you look on the right side, in a fully mainstream model, you will have all the required systems in place. I mean, most countries have ICQDA for exports and imports. They have a tax administration system. Then you would have, preferably, of course, systems from RDF, the MCAS and OGAS system for license management, but it could be other systems, just that each mining authority and petroleum authority have a system for managing licenses and the whole life cycle around that, the reporting obligations and fees and so forth. And these systems, we pull data from these systems and into another system that we call Fusion, and which we use for risk management. And it's here we can do the audit of all the government data into one place. And of course, the counterpart to do this audit, rather than being an international consultant flying in to understand and try to make sense of what's been reported on these forms, it should be done in close collaboration with the Auditor General, or maybe actually handed over completely to the Auditor General and be part of the Auditor General's reports that have access to all this data in one place. Auditor General, and Trygve will talk about that a little bit later, but as we know, they know these departments and ministries very well. And if you look at some of these annual reports, they are actually very interesting reading. They're very critical. Findings are very good. And they report to Parliament, which is, you know, there can still be a multi-stakeholder group, but I think that in a mainstream process, the accountability mechanisms should go have the authority and the mandate that an Auditor General brings with them, and report to the Parliament and other public oversight bodies. That is, that's how democratic states works. And then you can have companies reporting, and then preferably they will report online. They wouldn't fill in these forms, and preferably actually they will report directly from their own systems. But there are already 2 main reporting vehicles that all companies are mandated to submit and comply with already. So rather than making a parallel reporting process, we should incorporate the EITI reporting requirements into the tax returns and the production report. So the reason why I split this 2 is that you have one set of reporting requirements as a tax entity, taxable entity, and another set of requirements as a company that has a license. And you know, we have reporting obligations under the license, and that might be production report, annual reports, and so forth. Now, when we have all this data integrated together, Fusion can publish data, But a lot of this data to a portal. So we have a Fusion portal that provides ICPTR statistics to also to emphasize that a lot of these systems are government data, and they cannot live stream every transaction from the central bank. That's not how it works in terms of privacy from the company and stock exchanges and so forth. So a lot of this data can be published periodically. So when we talk about systematic disclosure, we want to automate this, but we can do more of a live publication of the license-related data and not some of the other data in Fusion. So I've broken this down into 4 components. So what does it entail? First is that one area that could be improved is that all license-related data is automatically disclosed. That means that the authorities that are issuing and managing these licenses, they have license management systems that where they record the payments and so forth, and they do automatic disclosure. And we have done that in Sierra Leone, Liberia, Ghana, Mali, Afghanistan. You have good examples. Not everyone is perfect, because these systems are big, but it now becomes interesting to look at what kind of processes are in place for the proper management of these licenses. The second step is that companies can report online using Govin, for example. There has to be some improvement to the e-service of the company. The companies are submitting, not in a good way that includes all the EITI requirement aspects. And preferably, it should be 2 sort of streams of reporting, license-related and taxpayer-related, and not a third stream that is only for EITI. The third area here is to integrate all the government system data into one place. That makes audits much easier. And here we will see example from Senegal and Guinea in this presentation, which is great. And that also includes that now when the audit is being done, it's being done with more or less live data and also across all transactions. So there's no threshold. Of course, the auditors can select thresholds, but it includes all transactions in one place. So in order to mainstream, I think that this auditing process should include the national auditor offices, auditor general offices, and it should be start shifting towards a more and more focus on systems audit. What are the processes behind these systems, and what quality do they bring? And now when that's in place, we can publish from the central database, and you can select what kind of data you want to publish. And so if we go back to this model, you see that, okay, first you have the underlying systems at the bottom here, functional systems with integrated data sharing with Fusion, and you have an e-service portal that is submitting also to Fusion. So the Auditor General will then support with the audits with all the data into one place, and Fusion can publish data in a portal. In addition to that, the mining and oil and gas ministries might have their own portals. So what is required? Well, in my experience, I'm not aware of any country in Africa or any developing country that does not have some systems already in place. And so every country can start somewhere. I am pretty sure about that. The thing is that the more mature the systems are, the more you can do in terms of automating, for example, the integration and do more analysis because you have more data sets and so forth. So it's about the system process quality behind. And also these systems, for us to integrate into Fusion, we need all the data to reference the tax ID numbers. If not the tax ID number, it needs to be the business registration number or some other unique identifier. So if none of the other line ministries have referenced a tax ID number, we are not able to knit this data together. Then we have to start with some manual process to say, okay, this company is actually referring to this company in the taxpayer registry, it's this company in the oil license registry, you know. So it's very important that the taxpayer registry system has an API or data service where other systems can look up the tax ID and to verify and make sure that they're referencing their data with the tax ID number. This is an often missed point in feasibility studies, which, by the way, we think is not really required, or we prefer that considering the time the countries have, if you start to track of a feasibility study, it takes, you know, in practice, the idea is that it will take 6 months, you know, 1 year, but in reality, it's shown that it will probably delay an eventual system implementation with two years, maybe 3 years. I don't think countries have time for that, and I don't also think it's necessary. We have not seen anything in the feasibility study that that is vital to the implementation. And also, the EITI International Secretariat has broken down a lot of the questions looked for in feasibility studies into a long list of questions that also the multi-stakeholder group on their own can review and answer to. So now I've already spoken for quite a bit, and I don't see my time here, but I'm going to go on for a little bit more, just showing you some examples what we mean by license-related systematic disclosure. So at the bottom here, you see the license management system pushing data automatically to a portal where it's not only for EITI and EITI transparency, it's also for attracting investments, for building trust among the investors. That's why also we do this. But the whole point here is that if governments have a good system in place, manage all these processes, application, licenses, the blocks, the fee calculations, reporting obligations, reviews the report, do the payments collection. Payments collection could be in a different system, but the license management system needs to calculate the fees because these are sometimes complicated fees. There are, as you know, per area size and so forth. These things need to be managed in a system like this. This is a MCAS system, and I deliberately did not show you a nice map because it's almost a bit of misunderstanding now that the mining cadastre is all about overlap detection. And yes, that was a very important component some years ago, but now all the systems have solved that, and overlap is not really a big challenge. And if a system only looks at overlap, you're going to miss out on the whole other aspects of this, which is very important for EITI, which is the processing application, the workflow, how the licenses are allocated, whether it's tender or first come, first serve, what are the contract fiscal terms. You want to publish the contract, and no, we don't want to publish the contract without the license information related to it, because then it's just a document and you don't know if it's the license is still valid or what happened to that license. Maybe it was renegotiated or renewed and so forth. So it's very important that when the contract publication, like for example in MCAS, you can in the license profile publish that contract, and then in the portal it shows together with the license information, and then you know the public can actually make sense of it, because otherwise it's a contract they don't even know if it's valid. Also, another important point often missed is that mining cadastre systems have had a tendency to focus only on companies or license types that have a place on the license tenement map. And so if it doesn't have coordinates, so it shouldn't be part of the mining cadastre. But you know, we don't think like that. We think this is about digitalization. You want to digitalize the processes that the ministries are doing. And if they issue dealers and export licenses, that is something that we want in there, because it's crucial for due diligence for the international buyers to be able to look up and verify who they are buying from, whether the seller that have offered them gold or diamonds actually have an export license. That's a very important part. So if the cadastral system does not include dealers and exporter, or whatever, you don't need to call it cadastral. Well, let's call it the license management system. But if the dealers and exporter registry is not available online, then there's no point, it's not possible for buyers to verify who they're buying from. It's a very important aspect. And with artisanal as well, often we talk about ASM without separating small scale and artisanal. There's a big difference between the two, and often there's different institutional setups for dealing with the two. But anyway, let me skip to the next one, which is the portal that MCAS publishes data to. And the point here is that this systematic disclosure needs to go beyond the licensed tenement map. And that's why I showed you this screen, which shows, which was taken today of the Sierra Leone online repository. And you can see that it was synchronized. It's synchronized every hour. Every hour, it's systematically published. And there you can look up the company and license. You can see the license allocation criteria, the fiscal terms. This portal can allow governments to publish the contract. You can see the ownership details. You can download Excel and so forth. That is going far beyond just having a licensed tenement map online, and that's what's required for EITI mainstreaming. The other thing, when it comes to company reporting, why do we want the companies to report online? Well, we want to make it to lower the barriers to compliance. We want to make it very simple for the companies to make sure that they comply with the license regulations. And that's why these portals are a great tool, because they allow the companies to do their own self-compliance. And that builds trust. Because right now in many countries, companies are, for example, submitting a report by paper. They never hear anything back. They never get the feedback. But the system ensures there's feedback. They instantly get a notification, and they know where it is, and they can see when they submitted and so forth, and they can use this to show their own compliance. And on the system side, when the government reviews the report, they also see that, okay, this was compliant, thank you very much. That whole interaction is now much improved because it's a whole rule-based process. Now, this portal can link to the Govin form submission. So the next step is this. Now, it sounds like there's a lot of portals, but these are all interlinked. They're plug and play together. So the Govin platform allows the government to design any form. Whether it's a tax return form that can be very complicated. This is just in these days, companies in Cameroon are submitting their tax returns. Last time I checked, they've just been started for a few days, and they've submitted 6,000 companies have submitted their tax returns. And that's a tax return form that was 76 tabs in an Excel file before. So it's a very complex form, way too complex, I'm sure. But this allows the government to create these forms electronically, and now companies can submit it electronically, and then you can point where the forms are going to submit the data. So we say, okay, this data should be submitted to Fusion. Okay, then it sends the data to Fusion. And also each form is also an API. It's a bit early to ask the companies to submit directly from their electronic systems, but there was actually 100 companies in Cameroon last year that submitted through the API, meaning that they submitted directly from their own accounting system the tax return to the DGI, which is, I think, is if you think about mainstreaming or where we're going in years to come, this is the direction. And in all developed countries, this is most companies are doing it this way now. Okay, then we come to Fusion, that pulling data, all the data together, and it sorts the data according to company. So now it has services. On the left side here, you see services, which means the participating institutions. So these are all the institutions that are sharing data. And then for each institution, you have multiple data sets. but all the data is like knitted together based on tax ID, or you have to use some other unique identifier like business ID or something. But that means that we can create these company profiles, and we can run indicators and identify risks and so forth, and that's improving audits. And it's not only for EITI, but a lot of these discrepancies can be detected automatically now, and that's a sort of direction we would like to go, not just for the Auditor General, actually, and not just for EITI, but also for example, the tax authority, compliance, and so forth. And then we have these Fusion online portals where statistics can be presented from Fusion, and you can have a nice presentation there. So to summarize this, now you understand maybe this model a little bit better. So the underlying systems, I focused on showing the licensing systems, how it all ties together into one place at the Fusion, the data warehouse or the risk management system. The role of the Auditor General is critical for government audits. And then you have the Govin and e-service portals for companies to do their own compliance. And petroleum and mining can also have their own portal because they have a lot of more data that is related to licenses. Not enough to just show a map. You need to break it down. And you can have a Fusion portal with statistics. Now, I think that I've spent enough time breezing through this. So Vera, I don't know if you had any questions.
Yeah, sure. There's a question by Eva Kirch. And the question was, how do you ensure that all data streams can be matched to one particular company, given the multitude of systems that different data sets will be coming from?
Yes,
so
that's a very good question, and Eva Kirsch knows what she's talking about, and that's why I highlighted that this is a challenge, because you know, you would assume that all governments know the tax ID of the companies that they're dealing with, but the reality is that they don't. And often they don't have a way to look it up in the taxpayer registry, because the taxpayer registry is in the tax office, and they don't have such a service or an API data service, which we would like to install in every country we're in, because it's so crucial. I don't think that ministries should give a service to a company unless they are registered for tax, for example. And the only way that the ministry can ensure that they are not giving such services is that they are able to go from their system and look up in the taxpayer registry and verify the tax ID. The other thing is that when this is quite messy, right? Let's say the taxpayer registry is a mess, lots of duplications, which is a big problem. And the ministry, what happens is that each ministry maintains their list of companies. So they have their own company registry, mini registry, if you like, that they are dealing with. Instead of having a lookup, for example, in the business register office, if they had a data service with the authoritative address of a company, for example, on the business registration number, that all systems were connected to, now that would be very, very helpful. So sometimes I think that in terms of this integration, the best starting point would be to clean up those registries and make sure that they have these data services where we can connect and verify.
I think that was the only question, Osmond, unless you have something else to add. Oh, there's someone else. Tombe Lugali. Are all oil producing companies aware of this reporting system propagated by RDF?
We don't interact with the oil companies. We only interact with government. So we will help a government with systems, and those government institutions will then inform the companies when they go live with Govin, for example. And bear in mind that Govin is a new tool, so it's not that you know, many governments are not available, that this is an opportunity. In terms of oil gas as well, we have come much further on the mining sector, but on the oil side, you know, in the oil sector, often there are very few licenses. So initially, the government do not see the need for why they would need to have a license management system, because they have 3 licenses, active exploration licenses, for example. Maybe they have 7. But the point is, what's going on within those licenses might be very tremendously important. And also, there's also always the licensing rounds that are unsubscribed, you know, that there are not enough companies that are bidding. So that's why systematic disclosure can help with making sure that you can actually bid and access geodata, for example, online. But this is in the oil and gas sector, we are still innovating and developing this. And in fact, we're going to have another webinar at the end of April, we hope, on the oil and gas sector.
All right, so next question is from Fahad. Sorry, I thought I was unmuted, but next question is from Fahad Al-Zayed. It says, in our time, we suffered from problems of hacking. How can we avoid this problem and preserve public information?
Okay. Yeah, this is a good question. And as you saw from my presentation, this is also why we separate the public portal with the underlying administrative system. It means that the administrative system can be installed on government network, protected by government firewalls, and the only connection between that system and the portal is an API data synchronization service that goes through one port. And through that API, it's not possible to disrupt or ruin the integrity of the government system. And so that's why we have separated these two, and we have a synchronization tool in between. And often what we see is that there are other systems in place that are trying to make a public a module of the administrative system. But that makes that system very vulnerable to hacking, because then you have put it online and you allow some form of user permissions and user access. And then it's much more likely that they might break in and disturb the data integrity. So that's why we have separated it. And it's quite impossible to make disruption to the data integrity of the government systems through this data service.
Next question is from Marit Otojan. Sorry, if I mispronounce your name, don't worry about it. The question is, are you interacting with the government through EITI in each country?
We are interacting with a lot of government institutions, mostly on the mining, oil and gas side, and the tax authority. But for every country, it's a little bit different who we have spoken with, of course. So we're always interested in being connected and be able to present and make a proposal. But often EITI is not actually the entry point for us, because we have worked for 10 years now and we already know most ministries. However, in some cases we see EITI has been an entry point. So, and also in some projects, the pressure and interaction with EITI has been tremendously helpful in making sure we've been successful in delivering these projects. So we see that collaboration as very important.
All right, I think the last one is from Desmond, and he asked, is Govin available for Sierra Leone at the moment?
Govin is, well, it's being implemented for mining companies to submit their production reports and reports to NMA. And I think they're just about to announce to the mining companies that they should submit through the online repository. Online repository will tell them their reporting obligations, what report they have to complete, and then when they click on that, they move to the Govin to open the form there. They complete the form and they submit, and that's how the two work together. But it's not introduced for EITI declarations, and neither for tax returns.
Okay, I think we got most of the questions there. So we can go ahead. If there's nothing else that's urgent, keep the questions coming, even if it refers to Osman's section of the discussion. I will write them down. If possible, I will respond to you personally in the chat. If not, then I'll just try to find a window of opportunity where it can be addressed, even if during the last part of a discussion. But we can go ahead. I think our next panelist is Mr. Christensen. So you can go ahead and start your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So, I will try to share my.
Hey, Osman, could you stop sharing the screen?
Yeah, sorry.
So, yeah, all right, thanks.
Okay. Yes, so hello everyone. So I've been asked to present from the perspective of the Intosai working group on audit of extractive industries, which in a way is representing the auditor generals that Osman has been mentioning. And regarding myself, I'm with the Office of the Auditor General of Norway. I'm a senior advisor within our international division, and currently heading our petroleum capacity development program for where we are assisting other SEIs. And we are also a member of the working group on audit of extractive industries, which is within Intosai. So Intosai is the global community for supreme audit institutions. And this working group is an initiative within which shall promote the audit of extractive industries. It is chaired by the Supreme Audit Institution of Uganda, which also hosts the secretariat for this working group. And I see that some of my colleagues from Uganda, they are some of the participants for this session. So I really appreciate that. And so this working group shall promote, among others, experience sharing. We see that some SEIs have come further when it comes to auditing their extractive industry sector. We do some capacity building activities and training. We also encourage cooperative audits where we bring SEIs together to audit specific topics. Then lastly, our role is also to raise awareness on the importance of SEIs in this sector, and that's I think is the reason for our attendance here. So we have been working and interacting with EITI for some years now, where we been working with EITI to do this transition towards mainstreaming, and so we have been discussing with EITI how could we envision a possible role of SEIs when it comes to the EITI reconciliation process. So we have been working with EITI on in many arenas. I think most importantly was a joint workshop that we had in Addis Ababa, October 2019, where we took stock of how SEIs could be integrated in the EITI process. And the long-term goal is to, I think, is to replace the independent assessor and insert the SAI in some way or another. But of course, that's easier said than done. But I think learning more about this this fusion system, which has been presented by Austin and the Revenue Development Foundation, I think that could be an important stepping stone in making that possible. So I think so. How we see this system is that I think it's important to have data available in one place, and we see that for this system that will be possible, and that will potentially lead to faster and higher quality of our audits, mainly because getting the data usually takes a lot of time. So if the auditor has to spend less time on combining different data sets, that will definitely enhance and make the audit more efficient. And also a problem for and a challenge for auditors is to get access to data and information from various resource ministries. And if these systems allow for regular updates and access to this type of information, then that could be saving time for a number of SAIs. And I assume also for tax administrations as well, because they would have to do many of these first lines of control. And I think this data integration is important because it forces government actors to cooperate and share data. So we see that in some countries there are many incentives for not cooperating and sharing data. They might be working in silos. So I think I'm really looking forward to hearing the examples afterwards from on how they've been using this fusion system. And as Osman mentioned, so the potential role of SAIs could be to audit the integrity of the systems that are feeding into the fusion portal. And so we could look at things like access control and hacking. Yeah, even though the government firewalls and could be robust, there are many skilled IT auditors in the SAIs out there that could find ways around it. And we know that IT audit is an emerging audit discipline, and it's highly relevant when it comes to auditing the extractive industry sector. So I think that could be a huge area of potential. And then if you have all the data in one place, then the SAIs may apply algorithms and machine learning to identify high-risk areas. Instead of doing all the sampling, if you have big data and you have complete data sets, then you could use the machines and the algorithms to identify the red flags, and then you can do more substantive testing on those areas. And then, yeah, so I think you could do a number of audits, for example, performance audits, where you can compare application for licenses and permits and approval for licenses and permits. You can see, so you can try to compare that to the efficiency of the system. So then I would like to end by saying that I think a formalized role of the SAI within the EITI process should take into account a number of things. Of course, what is important is the mandate and role of the SAI. Although the SAI may be an end user, it will first and foremost serve its main stakeholder, which is the Parliament. which is the main stakeholder in most countries. So it's important that the role of the SCI fits into the regular audit cycle, I would assume. And then also the reporting format and timing of the report, and also available resources. So if this is something which will add to the existing workload, then we also have to look at the risks. If this means that the SCI have to not prioritize other sectors. So I think yes, these systems represent a big potential for using the SCIs more and possibly be the end user of the mainstream process. But we have to look at the unique role of the SCI in each country. They have different mandates and also different levels of independence as well. But we look forward to learning more about these systems, and we also would like to see if we could invite the Revenue Development Foundation to our working group, so that we can learn more about their work in the countries they are operating within. So yeah, that was a short presentation from my side. So if you have any questions, please type your questions in the chat window, and maybe also some of my colleagues who are working with the working group can also answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. You actually had 2 questions before you even started the presentation. So I'm just going to start with those. The first one is, what is the main challenge that SCIs face in EITI mainstreaming?
Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer. Of course, there are different stories around there, but I would assume that maybe resources would be a constraint, and also technical competence as well, since this is a highly, in some areas, a technical area, and access to information, I know, has been a constraint in many countries as well. So I think, and also a problem may also be that to have a larger trust in the SCI as well. In some countries, the SCI may not to be perceived, is perceived to be maybe weak, or they are maybe unsure of the capacity of the SCI to undertake this role. And if they are unsure, maybe to a larger extent bring in the SCI in the process of doing this independent assessments. So maybe build capacity of the SCIs for it to undertake this role, both in terms of competence, resources, and mandates. I think would be important.
All right, thank you. The second question that came in is also a little on the broader side, but what are some of the common issues in the EITI review assignments? I'm not sure what you understand by that, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, okay, so the common findings, like what are the findings in the EITI report? Well, yeah, there might be, of course, there might be discrepancies, of course, by what's been reported as paid taxes by the companies and what has been received, and we see that in some cases, SCIs have followed up on that. We know that in Zambia, they had an interesting audit where they tried to find the cause of this discrepancy, and that's an area where the SEI could follow up. I think the EITI reports have been useful for the SEI as part of when they're doing the risk assessments, and so they have had a role in following up. So I think that's been most useful. Yeah, but although I have read some EITI reports, I don't know. I've not read so many to the extent that I can say what's the most common findings. But yeah, discrepancies I would guess are quite common.
All right, there's a last question from Mohammed, and it says, is it possible to send the scientific content of the meeting to the bodies participating in this meeting? And it will be provided on the website of a working group? Mohammed, sorry, I don't understand your question quite. Could you resend it so that I try to understand what you needed from that? But meanwhile, there's a question that came in that I think is great for Osmond. And the question was, is there a checklist when we do feasibility studies for EITI mainstreaming? You're also welcome to address it, Mr. Christensen, if you think it would help. I have some background in this, but I'd like you guys, either of you, to address it. I think it would be easier.
I think I mentioned that in my presentation, and that's why, hence the question was about this checklist. But I have seen, anyway, within the International Secretariat, there is a template for terms of references to conduct mainstreaming feasibility studies that are quite detailed, with a long list of questions that should be answered in the study. So my argument is that that exercise is not necessarily paving or preparing for a system implementation like a fusion, but it's an exercise that the multi-stakeholder group can do on its own to map out more about which systems do we have in place for what, and providing what data. I think that's an important exercise, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go through a complicated process to hire consultants to come in to do that feasibility study. Because the only thing we need for starting to implement this is that there are some systems in place already, and most countries already qualify.
All right, thanks, Osmond. Now you have questions. So, Umar, for Mr. Christensen, hello, do you audit research costs? Because we know that companies overvalue the costs. And how do you help governments by training them to calculate this?
Yeah, I know that the cost is high on the agenda for many SEIs. In most countries, of course, this is the role of the tax authority or petroleum authority or mining authority to maybe do the first round of verification of these costs. But as SEIs, we should audit to what extent do the tax authority have the capacity to really do this tax audits and capacity to look for transfer pricing cases as well. But we do have some SEIs that are actually doing the first round of control when it comes to this cost, like the SI of Uganda, actually, which have built up quite an impressive capacity in this area. But so we have a few examples of SEIs which have done audits in this area, but it's highly technical and yeah. But it's something that we really try to build capacity in the working group that we have.
All right, thanks for that. And I've clarified, Mohammed just wanted to know whether all this material is going to be available on the website to view later. Osman, are you going to share any slides or?
Yeah, we can share the presentations if that's okay with the participants or the panelists. We'll put it on our website.
Okay.
And we can send a link to all the registered participants afterwards with the link to that. So, but
all
maybe
right,
we
thanks.
should move on to go to the next.
Yeah, a quick one, which I think maybe just to close out about the IT audit. Mohammed Adel is asking, is that going to be done with software to ensure there's no hacking and system compliance, or how are you going to do it?
Yeah, I'm not an IT auditor, so I don't know the details, but yeah, often at least they have to understand the system that is being used on the platform. So and they have different methods for yeah, for looking into that. Yeah, I can't really give you the details on that.
I can give an example from Sierra Leone. The Auditor General in Sierra Leone have a user account, several user accounts in MCAS at the National Minerals Agency. When they audit NMA, they go in there and they pull out the payments reports and all the reports from the system, and that's the basis for their audit. So they should get access to the systems and be able to go over to the ministry, log in, and access all the data.
All right, thank you so much. So just so we don't run out of time, we're 1 hour in, and for those of us who are joining us a little bit later, we've had a presentation from Osmond, just an overview of RDF, and then we've had a presentation from Mr. Christensen, who works with a WGEI working group. And so we're going to go on to the next section, where we're going to be having Mr. Alioune Badara Pai. I am so sorry. Like, this is not my day with names. But go ahead and share your screen and welcome.
Thank you very much, Vera. That's fine. Good afternoon or good evening to all. I'm very pleased to join you in this webinar. So I will be, my name is Alioune Badara Pai, so that's correct. And we'll be presenting Senegal EITI mainstreaming project. We have produced our 2019 report with Fusion and Govin, and in partnership with RDF, which was a very challenging project and very successful. I think that will be my first. That was my first experience working with them, and it was quite a very professional collaboration and very proactive one. So the overview, I think, as you may all know, EITI mainstreaming is about encouraging the EITI countries, the implementing countries, to make transparency an integral feature of their governance and for the management of the extractive industries. The EITI tried to increase availability of information required by the standard through government corporate reporting systems as like databases, websites, annual reports, and portals. This helped to ensure that data is timely, available, reliable, and accessible. So this is one of the main objectives for mainstreaming. For our project in Senegal, it was funded by World Bank EGBS Trust Fund, and we started implementing that project in 2018. And the operational phase was from November 2019 to June 2020. So it was less a year that we have set up systems and bring together departments providing data and integrated that data to Fusion and also allow companies, private companies, mining and oil and gas companies to submit their data through Govin, and also set up that portal, public portal for data disclosure. So I will be going through the department providing data. We have like most of the EITI implementing countries, also the government agencies involved, like the Treasury, the Tax Authority, Customs, and also environmental agency, as well forestry, social security fund, and pension fund, and as well we have the Ministry of Petroleum represented by hydrocarbon department. And that we have some sophisticated systems already in place in the, especially in finance and budget ministry. It's mainly customs, tax authority, and treasury department who have the most advanced systems, and we automated the data transfer, so you don't need any human intervention once the setup is done. And for the other services, other agencies, we have like a semi-manual uploads that still is going on, but we're trying to sort for some of them to implement their systems. It's like the direction of hydrocarbons at the Ministry of Petroleum. They are setting right now with RDF and another Senegalese firm the cadastre, the online cadastre. So that will be helping automating the system. And we also have the Ministry of Mines trying to implement the system. So the idea is, we will see it later on, is to bring all the agencies' data in one place, and that will be for monitoring and follow up, ensuring that risks are minimized, and also the efficiency of revenue management and monitoring of those projects is more efficient. On company side, we also have the Govin system, which allow the companies from mining, oil and gas sector to submit their transform the EITI declaration form, which used to be Excel forms manually filled, into digital forms, and submitted for year per year. And this is, we have like 25 companies doing that exercise, because we need in EITI to get what we call the reconciliation process. So you need to reconcile whatever payment has been done with by the companies, the main companies in the country, with what government agencies declare as payment received. So this is an ongoing process that we used to do on a yearly basis and present it in the EITI report. So that's why Fusion and Govin have a plugin to communicate, and we will see one of the tools that RDF developed to allow that reconciliation. As I mentioned earlier, all place, that's one of the most have all this in Fusion right now, and from report, and it was as well Fusion, it
I'm not able to hear Paya anymore. I think actually there we lost him, right?
I think you lost me.
Oh, okay. Paya, yes,
Okay,
there
you're
you
back.
are. Please go back and we lost you for about 10, 15 seconds.
Okay.
If you can
So,
just share your screen again and
okay. The connection was cut off.
yeah.
You can see my screen.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I was at this point to explain what we can do with Fusion for the reconciliation process, because you can use Fusion to audit and find discrepancies between what companies declare and what the government agencies declare as a payment received. And you can analyze risk and set up indicators, compare data from different data sets, and which is very useful and very important. We can see even the Auditor General, I think, has mentioned the fact that we at some point don't need really a reconciler, which who used to be still is the independent administrator auditing or accounting firm which is contracted to do that exercise. We also have the data portal to reinforce accountability. It's very important for public to have access to data, and in open format, you can try to handle those data and export them to Excel or CSV, which is very useful for analysis and getting it's a very friendly portal, and you can see the type of minerals, the producers, the exports, data by destination, by type of minerals. And currently people are using it, and it's very useful for all the stakeholders. And I think it also minimizes the risk of hacking, which was related to the question in the chat, because this Fusion system is set up currently in Senegal on the intranet. So you don't have access if you are not part of the intranet. It's minimize the risk, even if they could be maybe hacking of that intranet, we agree. But this system allowed setting apart the public portal on internet and having the main system on the intranet protect better, I think, the overall system, and make it more reliable. So on the portal, you have as well all those departments providing data. You can go through their data and see whatever payment they have received. And what is interesting as well, we incorporate the contracts, so you can find it's a work in progress, but we are uploading the contracts because the requirement 2.4 in EITI standard is recommending, and now it's a requirement, a full requirement from 1st January this year, to disclose all the extractive contracts. So this portal is used as well to share the extractive oil and gas and mining contracts signed by government. So you can filter, you can search as well and download all the data in Excel format, which is a usable one. The lessons learned, it was a challenging project, but we can see that it's possible because we have produced between November 2019 and June 2020 all the data we required to make our 2019 EITI report 2019 possible, and we published it in 2020. It was a very challenging project, but it was we can say now it's possible to do it, and we have done it, and we need to implement it, and we have some challenges ahead. That's tax identification number. The key thing is, for integration, you need to have unique identifier, and the format of that identifier in administration system is also a key thing, because you need all departments need to look up and verify the tax identification numbers in taxpayer registry, so they can refer to the company in the same way, which is very important for data integrity, but as well for also having that comparison possible between different data sets. Plans going forward, we need to improve, as I said, the taxpayer registry to allow different departments to verify the tax identification number from registry, and also give the possibility to companies to declare online more regularly instead of the annual exercise we're doing right now. So they can often update like on quarterly basis, or every time they need it, to update some of the payment data they have already done into the system in Govin, and tracking expenditures through the government budget, because we are currently going to be an early producer for oil and gas. Projects are under development for first gas and first oil in 2023, and a law for revenue sharing is being prepared. And in EITI standard, implementing countries should indicate which extractive industries revenues, whether cash or in kind, are recorded in the national budget. But as well, we need to track the allocation of those revenues and see what is being given to the sovereign wealth and development funds, what has been given to subnational governments, because sometimes the impacted communities or local communities are saying, okay, well, the extraction or the production is going, and we are not seeing our part of the money. And it will be very important for social license to operate, and also fair revenue sharing to have that tracking done through the budget, and see whatever comes from those operations, where it's go. So we follow the money going to treasury, and also follow it through the budget, how it is expended. So the other key thing is automatize more the transmission of data from institutions, from government agencies. For the moment, someone still clicks on the button, and we need to automate that. And also the disclosure, so the portal is updated more often. This is the main areas we are trying to implement. And the big question is, for the coming years, are implementing countries going to stop using the independent evaluator or the independent administrator who is preparing on behalf of the MSG, the multi-stakeholder group, the report, and doing through the reconciliation process, which is a very time-consuming process. Sometimes we spend more than 3 months going through that reconciliation. If it is automated, I think it will be a great thing, and also it will be a less costly and effective way to do EITI or to implement EITI through the countries, even if there are resource-rich countries. Most of them are poor countries in terms of GDP, and also in terms of budget. So this is the key things we're trying to implement going forward. And thank you very much. If you have a question. Vera, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was an awesome presentation. There are actually some questions for Osmond. So I'll start with the ones that I think are directly for you. So how, oh, I think this is Osmond's. We'll skip that one. For, that's also Osmond. Okay, sorry. Yes, Malado Kane Is the Court of Accounts the only one authorized to certify the forms in Govern?
Yeah. For that question, thank you, Malado, for this question. Currently, the system is, we have two subsystems. The Govern one is for companies. So what companies have to do is just submit their forms into Govern, then it's printed. So they need to give it to the CEO to sign it, then send it to whatever agreed auditor it will be. But what is happening is the auditors are private co-auditors. It's not the Auditor General. The Auditor General is certifying and auditing what's come from administrations. So what come from the government agencies. Right now, what the companies are doing, they're sending to those audit firms established in Senegal or abroad to certify that their data, that the data they declare is in line with whatever is in their financial statements. So that's what's happening right now.
All right, thank you very much. Will I see whether you have additional questions? There's a question for Osmond. How do the systems help on integrating information relating to beneficial ownership? That's from
it's a good question. I
Management.
mean, we have in MCAS and OGAS, we have a module for you know, entering beneficial ownership, and also the direct shareholders and so forth under the company profile. But it's a little bit the same discussion as with the taxpayer registry, is that often, at least initially, when EITI started talking about beneficial ownership, they thought this was the responsibility of the mining ministry or the mining authority. But our argument was that it's actually the business registrar that should maintain the address of the company and the shareholder structure and so forth, because that's something that is changing every now and then. And there needs to be one place where government is updating their details, and it should actually be with the business registrar rather than being with the mining authority. But for now, in some countries, they are reporting the beneficial owners in MCAS, which shows and is systematically disclosed in the portal, and that's doable. I think also there's another question here about the ID. You know, how to connect, from Umar Wana, about the ID. The NINEA is the tax ID in Senegal, right, Pai?
Yeah, that's it. So this
yes.
is, yeah.
So, which is the issue that you presented, that how the ministries are verifying what the tax ID is. They need access to the taxpayer registry or a business registry to do that. And we have developed a system called Atom that can be a business registrar system or a taxpayer registry system that issues these numbers, and have an API service that allows you to connect from other systems. That we're glad to offer that. But yeah, I think it's a very important point and lesson from this project is that these registries are so important. And it's not only taxpayer registry, it's also the personal ID registry, the national registry of individuals, because individuals are the shareholders, are the persons behind the companies. And so it becomes very hard if every ministry, every government department are going to maintain their own list of individuals and companies. It's much better if they can look up and verify in existing registries. So. But I just want to, while I'm talking, I want to say to Pai that you know, when we signed this contract with Senegal, I was slightly nervous because it was a very ambitious project, and I was telling the team that, you know, be careful what you promise, because this is very ambitious and very short time frame, and we managed to do it in from November till till May, June, which is a really short time. And I hope that everyone understands that that was possible in Senegal because Senegal has had very good, strong leadership and ownership, understood what we were doing and so forth. And they also had quite good systems, even though there were problems with the tax ID and so forth. But it's not necessarily so that we can replicate this in 6 months in other countries. So it depends on the country environment a little bit as well. This was very fast in Senegal. And it's thanks to Paya and his team that we managed to do this. I'm very happy to hear about these results.
Thank you, Osmond. One last question before we move on. And as soon as I say that, I just got several other questions. So Sidi asked, what can other Francophone countries learn from the Senegal experience, especially given the fact that they have similar procedures in terms of public finance? That's for you, Aliou.
Yeah, so I think as Asmund mentioned, you need to get it right at the beginning. So get it right in the first place. And that's why what we have done in the first place was to conduct a feasibility study. It's very important to know what is to have a deep understanding of what the setup of the systems of government system are before starting the project. So this, I think, is the starting point to have that feasibility study done, even if Senegal and other Francophone countries have the similar legal and framework and set up systems of budgeting and all those accounting rules, public accounting rules. Still, you need to have that study and also see what will be the weaknesses and what will be the all the obstacle to the challenges ahead before you start implementing the project. And the other thing, I think, every once you get that study done, it quite be what the next challenge would be to mobilize all the administration involved to get them understand what the benefits of the project will be for them. Getting data in the same place is a very important achievement for the administration, because sometimes tax authority have no access to all the contracts, and that's in mining direction, you need to go there, or they need to send it to you if you know someone there. So this is like people are working not in a collaborative environment, but some way in we have documentation as everywhere, and at the end of the day, the monitoring of the optimal monitoring could not be done, and this is the way to show them what the benefits of the project could be. And showing that, I think you also need maybe a champion in those administration. We have a strong collaboration at the beginning with Treasury Department. They championed this project, and they was the one who are hosting right now our server. And it's very important to have that kind of engagement at the high level.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. But can I ask again, Paya, in other countries, we have actually suggested data sharing between government institutions. And Trygve also mentioned this, that they find that a lot of government institutions are working in silos and they hesitate to share data. And in some countries, we've been working for years and years with institutions. We have suggested data sharing agreements. There have even been committees established, working group to specify what should be in this agreement and so forth. And yet there is this hesitation because, and we were a bit surprised when we found this, because we thought that governments would consider themselves as one entity, But it seems that every institution is on their own turf, and we realized that one of the primary reasons there was no sharing was also because if you don't have a good system in place, and you know that your data is full of mistakes and full of, it will just raise questions if you shared it. Then you will keep it tight, and you will not want to share it. But so could that be the reason why in Senegal everyone agreed from the onset that they're going to share this data, or did you meet some resistance?
We have not seen many resistance or many challenges that way. The reason, I think, it's because already we have customs and tax authority having agreements in place before we started the project. So that was maybe one of our big, we were lucky that way to have that kind of setup in place before we started the project. And as well, Treasury and tax authority already have that kind of collaboration before we started EITI, even implementing EITI in Senegal. And one of the first recommendation that we have in the EITI 2015 report was getting that collaborative environment between tax authority, treasury, and also the customs, so they can both see whatever is recovered as payment which was fully done, because treasury is not don't know sometimes who is the taxpayer. They just register whatever has been done as payment and what the nature of the payment, but they don't chase who is the taxpayer. And treasury and customs and tax authority are the one chasing the taxpayer. So there are different kind of setups sometimes that you have, and in the first place you always see maybe that people don't want to share, but when you explain well what the idea is and what the outcomes will be for them and the benefits, and people start and you need strong leadership. I think the Ministry of Finance, the agreement we signed with them was very helpful to increase and make that leadership coming from them alongside with the Eiti.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mamadou Diaby has a question. And so since he's the next panelist, I am going to open up the floor to him to start with a question for Alioune to answer, and then he can go ahead and start his presentation. Go ahead, Mr. Diaby. Oh, actually, you're on mute. Are you able to unmute him, Asma?
Don't solve the micro.
Okay, that's okay for him.
Hello?
Hello?
We want to know.
Oui, en français, chose pour
Comme lui, elle est anglaise.
Okay, vas-y.
We want to know what time, what months the companies have for communicate information in Govin. 6 months or 12 months. In Guinea, it's 6 months. We have figured. You understand?
Yep. I understand what you want to say. So I will answer in first in French, then I will go to English if you allow, Vera. Okay.
That's perfect.
Pour nous, les compagnies, la déclaration qu'elles font, souvent, on le fait sur 45 jours avant le début de la mission de l'administrateur indépendant. Donc, on donne aux entreprises 1 mois et demi pour les déclarations. Et après, le processus de réconciliation s'ensuit et ça prend souvent la mission de l'administrateur indépendant 3 à 4 mois, comme vous avez l'habitude de le faire. Donc, on ne ferme pas dans Govin. Au fait, le système leur permet, dans un premier temps, pour les inciter véritablement à aller vite, on leur donne un timing de 45 jours. Et après, on ouvre pour la période de réconciliation parce qu'il y a des rectificatifs à faire. Et ça permet de boucler l'exercice en fin de compte. Si on commence au mois d'avril-mai, on boucle ça au mois de septembre. Donc, ça nous fait 4 mois à peu près. Pour terminer l'exercice. So, I was the question I think is to see what the time given to the companies to declare the payments and including information like the social expenses for the benefit of the local communities. So in Senegal, what we used to do is we open a window, a time frame for 45 days for declaration. So the companies fill in the digital forms in Govin, and then there is a reconciliation process. So those data coming from Govin are reconciled with what is coming from administration in Fusion, and it's like 3 to 4 months for that process to be done by the independent administrator. So it's straightforward. It's like the current exercise we're doing. We used to do with the manual forms. Nothing is changed. It's just the setups and more automate data submission, which has been implemented with Govin and Fusion as well.
Si je comprends bien, donc vous n'allez pas utiliser le semestre, c'est chaque année, c'est pendant 45 jours que vous ouvrez la plateforme Govin, ainsi les compagnies alimentent la plateforme et maintenant la réconciliation se fait après les 45 jours.
Okay, so I better see what his question is. It's about the periodicity of the declaration. If we are doing it on quarterly basis or on a yearly basis or every twice the year, so every 6 months, that was his question. Right now, we have not set up like periodicity, which is very tight for them, but we encouraging in the first place to say, okay, use the system as much as you can so we can see what's the capacity and what the best periodicity is before setting something which will be very difficult to maintain going forward. So mainstreaming is yes, about having timely data and also reliable data every time. But in the first place, we're trying to see what the capacities of those companies are and what their also the periodicity, which is more suitable for that. Donc, je disais que, en fait, la périodicité, pour le moment, on n'a pas adopté une périodicité de 6 mois ou de trucs. On regarde un peu la carte. Capacité des entreprises à faire la déclaration, à utiliser le système. Dans un premier temps. C'est pour ne pas se retrouver dans un schéma. Où ça va être difficile pour eux de tenir le rythme. Donc, on va regarder un peu, observer aussi cette année. Déjà, il y a certains qui ont commencé à déclarer dès le mois de janvier. Donc, dès qu'ils ont terminé leur année 2020, ils ont commencé à déclarer. Ça permet d'apprécier la force des uns et des autres et de pouvoir à la fin se retrouver avec une bonne périodicité qui va permettre, qui va arranger tout le monde. Si c'est 3 mois, si c'est 6 mois, ou bien si c'est l'année qu'on maintient, mais tout en encourageant tout le monde à faire de son mieux.
Merci bien.
OK.
All right. Thank you for that, Aliou. I'm going to invite Mr. Mamadou Diaby. Go ahead and give your presentation. Thank you.
Bien, bonjour tout le monde. Je suis Mamadou Diaby, je suis le secrétaire exécutif de l'Eiti au Guinée. Est-ce que vous m'entendez là? Hein? Dis-lui, ouais, il n'a qu'à venir. Est-ce que le micro est ouvert?
Oui, oui, c'est bon, c'est ouvert. On vous
Yeah,
entend.
we can hear you. Thanks.
OK. Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Je suis Mamadou Diaby. Je suis le secrétaire exécutif de l'Eiti au Guinée et c'est un plaisir pour moi de participer à ce webinaire. Je suis désolé de vous présenter ça en français. J'espère que vous allez pouvoir lire, n'est-ce pas, le PowerPoint que nous avons préparé à cet effet. Donc, c'est en application de la politique des données ouvertes adoptée par le comité de pilotage de l'Eiti Guinée et pour satisfaire à l'exigence relative à la divulgation systématique des données, l'Eiti Guinée a opté pour la mise en place d'une plateforme de déclaration dénommée GoBin. L'objectif visé par le comité de pilotage de l'Eiti Guinée en mettant en œuvre la plateforme GoBin est la migration vers la télédéclaration ou la déclaration systématique des données sur les paiements effectués par les entreprises minières et les revenus perçus par le gouvernement à travers les régies financières de l'État. Cela en harmonie avec la norme ITE. Les entités concernées sont toutes les entités déclarantes qui sont déterminées dans le périmètre de l'ITE et qui transmettent les formulaires de déclaration pour la rédaction des rapports ITE. La méthodologie utilisée est pour atteindre cet objectif, 2 formations présentielles tenant compte des mesures barrières contre la pandémie COVID-19 ont été faites les 8 et 9 juillet 2020 pour les régies financières de l'État et les entreprises extractives. Une autre rencontre, cette fois-ci virtuelle, a été organisée pour les 2 entités réunies, c'est-à-dire que les entreprises extractives et les régies financières de l'État. Ensuite, pour une plus grande maîtrise de la plateforme, une formation a eu lieu, a été faite dans le cadre d'un projet pilote qui comprenait les entités les plus contributives à l'économie nationale. Ce sont la Direction nationale des impôts, la Direction générale des douanes, la Direction nationale du Trésor et de la comptabilité publique. La méthode a été bâtie sur l'utilisation des anciens formulaires de déclaration LITIE. Enfin, un manuel d'utilisation a été fourni en ligne et sur papier aux utilisateurs de cette plateforme GoVin. La périodicité visée a été fixée par le comité de pilotage d'une fois par semestre. Et cette formation a été facilitée par Madame Camara de Revenue Development Foundation avec l'appui de la GIZ. L'avantage visé par l'Eiti Guinée de cette plateforme GoVin est non seulement une déclaration périodique programmée pour chaque exercice, une déclaration en ligne ne nécessitant pas de déplacement, une déclaration plus récente par rapport à l'utilisation optimale des revenus concernés, une déclaration facilitant le débat autour des industries extractives, une déclaration facilement réutilisable, une déclaration économisant l'appel aux administrateurs indépendants en réduisant leur utilisation. Et c'est pourquoi nous projetons que les prochains rapports ITE soient réalisés en utilisant cette plateforme GoVin. Je voudrais profiter de cette occasion pour remercier Revenue Development Foundation et la GIZ pour tous les efforts fournis et qui nous ont permis de mettre en place cet outil à la disposition de l'Eiti au Guinée. Et je me rends compte que nos amis du Sénégal sont beaucoup plus en avance sur nous, mais nous essayons de fournir les efforts nécessaires pour une meilleure utilisation de cet outil. Je vous remercie. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Diaby. I am trying to see if we found somebody who can elaborate for the guys who do not speak.
I shared the English version of the presentation on my screen. I'm not sure if people noticed that, so they could follow some of the points that he was making. I'm not sure if people saw that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, just in case maybe you weren't able to follow that word for word. Like I said, we'll share all this presentation and you'll have more information about how Guinea are implementing and planning to use Govern for their EITI mainstreaming. Meanwhile, while I see if there's going to be any questions or anyone will add to that presentation, I'm going to bring out a question which was put here by Christopher Clausen. And so the question is, do these systems link or combine the disclosures with information about audited financial statements? Are you or will you be looking for opportunities to include publications of audited financial statements to accompany public accessible financial data to provide some insight into a company's control system and accuracy for the data? I think there's a good question for us.
Good and very difficult question. The audited financial statements are very important, and I understand where he's coming from. However, I mean, there are in Govin, of course, you can connect, you can attach data from to support the forms. Of course, you can make attachment, and you saw from Senegal that. A lot of the data that they have requested are actually annexes to the form. So they complete the form, but then they will also add a lot of extra information. Audited financial statement should probably be one of them. Now, for each of the forms, there's also an API that the companies can use, which I mentioned where they can look at the API documentation for that form and report directly from the internal systems, and then they could report their audited data from the previous fiscal year and so forth. So, I mean, there are possibilities. Another way to use audited financial statements also in terms of, we talked about social development expenditure, right? And we have, for example, a module in MCAS to track social development expenditure. There's also a module to track expenditure. We also mentioned that in this discussion about the costs that companies may inflate, and the basis for the purpose is to make sure that we know that they qualify for the minimum expenditure that was committed to as part of the contract, or committed to social development work or projects, which is also a requirement in the EITI, that you have to break down those social development expenditure. And there a module is not yet used by any countries, but we have introduced it for social expenditure, where you could use the audited financial statements to verify the expenses on those projects. I think that's the best answer I can come up with. But it's definitely, I think he's onto something about the company's own control systems and their data. That's something that is very important.
All right, and there's a question here from Jorge Ortiz. And he says, what does it mean, govern usage? And what I understand from that is maybe, Osmond, you can talk a little bit about what govern is and what specifically the system is used for, especially, I guess, in the context of Guinea.
Yeah, Govern is an e-service portal that allows government to define forms, like for example the Eiti declaration form, and the companies to submit electronically. So they might complete the form and upload all the supporting documentation online, and then government receives that electronically instead of using these Excel forms and so forth that they used before. So that's the purpose of Govin. And Govin is can also send forms to multiple different systems. So that means that you can have one Govin. It's actually, the name is from in Norway, this e-service portal is called All In, which is all the government systems are connected to it. And whenever I want a service from government, I log into All In and I find the forms that I want to trigger this service for, and the system will know that, okay, now I'm submitting this request to this department, and then they will respond. So that's the model we're trying to mimic.
All right, so unless there are any other questions, we have a random, I think, 9 minutes before the end of the webinar. You're welcome to ask any questions or any clarification you may have needed earlier and didn't get a chance to. This is the time to go for it. Or for any of the panelists who are still here, you can also add some information if you'd like. I actually have one question from Mohammed. Let's see. Okay, so Mohammed Adel, I am not, yes, okay, so I'm gonna read your question the way it is typed out, and then we'll see who wants to have a go at it. So the question is, do you agree with me that the existence of a legal obligation within the state will help in implementing these regulations? Anyone can have a go at this.
Okay.
I think the question is more of, does legal obligation within the country make implementing these regulations easier, or does it have any effect, just having the legal obligation?
Well, I think that all the data and so forth that that's our argument, is that the reporting should follow the obligation stated in the law as a taxpayer and as a mining license holder, for example. So these obligations that are surrounding these, the taxpayer entity and the mining license or oil and gas license and so forth, that's the basis for this whole reporting mechanism. And then we can expand on the requirements within those forms in the production reports, for example, to include all kinds of aspects that we want to consider for compliance purposes. And so I think everything that we're doing is trying to make a state more efficient in executing what is already described in the laws and regulations. I think Paye was raising his hand, and I think also Geir, maybe from the Auditor General in Norway. I'm not sure if he raised his hand as well. Maybe you can give us a chat message.
Yeah, thank you, Asmund. I just wanted to add on your last point that the regulatory framework and the legal aspect is important for the reliability and the sustainability of the system, because it gives, it's like the law is reinforcing what we're trying to achieve in terms of accountability, increasing accountability from government and agencies and companies as well. So it will help, but also there is another thing is people need to have appropriation of the process. They need to self-appropriate the process and know that it for their own benefits. What I said is always is EITI is more benefiting to companies than even government, because it's through EITI that, okay, communities are seeing whatever payment has been done or whatever expenses was done in terms of social or environmental or payment to government from those companies. And it's maybe relate also to one question I can see from Tombe Logala Lukak in the chat. How do you ensure that the data prepared by the companies are accurate and complete? That I think coming from the having a mining background and oil and gas as well, that where I work in the company, there are very strong standard in terms of financial and statesman and reporting. Most of the case of Senegal, most of the big companies we have right now are listed, and those Security Exchange Commission are very seeing very, very deeply all those information relate to financial, because you need to give to shareholders the right information. And as citizens in hosted countries, we are like the other third party and shareholders of the indirect shareholders of the companies mining or operating in our country. So we relying on cross-checking information as a secretariat with whatever is coming is public internationally, and whatever we have in those financial statements produced locally, to see if there is discrepancies, because the framework is here. The law is telling companies that you need to report, and also there are penalties for reporting, and there is a reputational risk also doing wrong reporting. And the other way is also you cross-checking with whatever source of or databases you have to see if the information is right or not. So this is, I think, quite often question which we pick up. But as professional, we know, coming from those operations, that most of the time we just need to build a better. To have a confidence, higher confidence in data, because it's not easy to cheat if that is what you're mining. The other aspect is with government, there are a lot of possibilities. So what we're doing in Senegal right now is with the companies, they submit as well their statement, financial statement through government. And we have because they used to give it to tax authority only, and right now it's also submitted through government, and it's becoming mandatory through the EITI standard to have that disclosure of financial statement through requirement 4.1 of the EITI standard version 2019. So this is kind of possibilities we get. And the possibilities for you to get more data is just trying to convince what the need are, that the need for analysis, the need to have a better accountability are, and then to bring together companies to accept that and try to comply with what you're trying to achieve. And together, I think we all, at the end of the day, will be reaching that being that in this journey, which is toward transparency and greater accountability of all stakeholders.
All right, thank you, Alian. Just to close out the session, because we have, I think, 2 minutes or less. There's a question for you, Osmond, on whether we have any collaboration with the Norwegian Oil for Development to coordinate or promote the RDF approach. And then I'm gonna ask you, once you answer the question, to just go ahead and close out the webinar.
We would like to collaborate with the Knowledge Bank, and we are aware of each other's, but we don't receive any funding from the Norwegian government. So RDF is a project, entirely project-focused and funded organization. So we don't receive any core fund support. We are working directly with government institutions. We create projects or win projects, and we implement them, and that's how we operate. So with the knowledge bank, the Norwegian government is providing support for the Oil for Development program, Tax for Development, and so forth, but they're only using government institutions to provide support to government. So because RDF is a bit of a strange construct. We're an NGO providing bilateral technical assistance, basically, and we don't fit this model doesn't fit into the NORAD framework, unfortunately. But we would very much like to work closer with the Auditor General of Norway, and also with Oil for Development if it's possible. But yeah, so far it's more about exchange of information. So I guess that was the last question. And I think also you noticed that Geir made a comment about IT audits, that they will run scripts to test different aspects of the systems that they're auditing. I think that was a very important comment. So we look forward to that being done on any of our systems to see if our defenses will keep up, but I think we're pretty solid. Okay, now there's more questions. How do we stop this? The next challenge for MCAS, the portal, and the link to EITI. I think, you know, I've been working now with RDF for 10 years, and it's gone a little bit in phases. At some point, we were really behind on software development. And I'm very glad to see now that our software development has systems have reached a level of maturity that where we can achieve a lot and a lot more than maybe we planned to do. And so very glad we're in this situation now. I think one challenge that we find is that even though we have strong government ownership and we have you know, interest, and we know that our systems can be delivered and resolve a challenging country, we still have to fit into a donor program or find some funds in the national budget to get us a contract to implement that project, and that can sometimes be a very cumbersome route, and can take in some cases you know, it takes years to get a project materialized. But we do the best we can, and we are basically spending all the resources we have on supporting, even though there are no projects. Okay, I think we have to round up there and wrap up and summarize this. I hope that the participants have got a good impression of sort of what mainstreaming entails in terms of system integration perspective, and that you are aware of some of our systems. And I think that it's worth paying attention to Senegal, which made a fantastic presentation, and also to explain how they worked with mainstreaming and integrating all the government systems and setting up Govin. I think it's fantastic results that many countries would want to copy. And we see that Guinea is also moving forward, which I think is great. I really appreciate that we have enthusiasm and commitment to implement these systems. And of course, our commitment is that for as long as RDF exists, we will guarantee that the systems work as intended, and there are no license fees, no software costs, and we guarantee remote technical support for as long as we exist. So with that, I think maybe we should close it, because we spent 2 hours. we have recorded this session, and we will send an email to all of you with a link to the presentations and the recording. And please share it with your colleagues that did not get the opportunity to participate today. And then we hope to continue this discussion, and we will invite for more interesting webinars once every month or so, maybe, hopefully. And thank you for all the panelists and all the participants today. A record number of attendees. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pai. Thank you, Jabi. Thank you, Pai.
Thank you, Osman. Thank you,
And
Vera.
thanks, Vera,
Thank you
for managing all the questions.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Osman.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mr. Diaby and Ali.
Thank you, Vera. Thank you, Doyen Jabi. Au revoir. À bientôt.
Au revoir. À bientôt. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Ouais, bye bye.
Bye. Bye.